I'm going to do a reading from the stories of Heinrich Boll. I guess this is what he looked like in 1941, and this is what he looked like in 1980. Fascinating, not so much. I don't know why they put those pictures on the back. I guess just to make you want to read the book more. But Heinrich Boll was the first German to win the Nobel Prize for Literature since Thomas Mann. He was born in 1917, so it's a bit old. The story I want to read is called Anecdote Concerning the Lowering of Productivity. Here's the book. Stories of Heinrich Boll. And here's the anecdote. In a harbor on the west coast of Europe, a shabbily dressed man lies dozing in his fishing boat. A smartly dressed tourist is just putting a new roll of color film into his camera to photograph the idyllic picture. Blue sky, green sea with peaceful snowy white caps, black boat, red woolen fisherman's cap. Click, once more, click, and since all good things come in threes and it's better be safe than sorry, a third time, click. The snapping, almost hostile sound awakens the dozing fisherman, who sleepily sits up, sleepily gropes for his cigarettes, but before he has found what he's looking for, the eager tourist is already holding a pack under his nose. Not exactly sticking a cigarette between his lips, but putting one into his hand, and a fourth click, that of the lighter, completes the overeager courtesy. As a result of that excess of nimble courtesy, scarcely measurable, never verifiable, a certain awkwardness has arisen that the tourist who speaks the language of the country tries to bridge by striking up a conversation. "You'll have a good catch today." The fisherman shakes his head. "But I've been told the weather's favorable." The fisherman nods. "So you won't be putting out?" The fisherman shakes his head. The tourist grows more and more uncomfortable. It is clear that he has the welfare of the shabbily dressed man at heart, and that disappointment over the lost opportunity is gnawing at him. "Oh, I'm sorry. Aren't you feeling well?" At last, the fisherman switches from sign language to the spoken word. "I feel fine," he says. "I've never felt better." He stands up, stretches as if to demonstrate his athletic build. "I feel terrific." The tourist's expression grows steadily more unhappy, and he can no longer suppress the question that threatens, so to speak, to burst his heart. "So why aren't you putting out?" The reply comes promptly and succinctly. "Because I was already out this morning." "Was it a good catch?" "It was so good that I don't need to go out again. I had 4 lobsters in my traps, and I caught almost 2 dozen mackerel." The fisherman, finally wide awake, now thaws and gives the tourist a reassuring pat on the back. The latter's worried expression strikes him as a sign of touching although unwarranted concern. "I even have enough for tomorrow and the day after," he says, to put the stranger's mind at rest. "Will you have one of my cigarettes?" "Thanks, I will." Cigarettes are placed between lips. A fifth click. The stranger sits down on the edge of the boat, shaking his head, and puts down his camera, for he now needs both hands to give emphasis to his words. "I don't wish to interfere in your personal affairs," he says, "but just imagine if you were to go out a second, a third, maybe even a 4th time today, and you were to catch 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 dozen mackerel. Just imagine that." The fisherman nods. "You would," the tourist continues, "go out not only today, but tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and indeed on every favorable day, 2, 3, maybe 4 times. Do you know what would happen?" The fisherman shakes his head. "In less than a year you would be able to buy a motor, in 2 years a second boat, in 3 or 4 years you might have a small cutter, and with 2 boats or the cutter you would obviously catch much more. One day you would have 2 cutters, you would. From sheer enthusiasm, his voice cracks for a few seconds. You would build a small cold storage plant, maybe a smokehouse, later a pickling factory. You would fly around in your own helicopter, spot schools of fish, and direct your cutters by radio. You could acquire the salmon rights, open up a fish restaurant, export lobster, direct to Paris without a middleman. And then, once again, words fail the stranger in his enthusiasm. Shaking his head, grieved to the very core of his being, and having lost almost all pleasure in his vacation, he looks out onto the peacefully advancing tide where the uncaught fish are happily leaping around. And then, he says, but again he is speechless in his agitation. The fisherman pats him on the back as if he were a child with a fit of choking. Then what? He asks softly. Then, says the stranger with restrained enthusiasm, then, without a care in the world, you could sit here in the harbor, doze in the sun, and look at the glorious sea. But I'm already doing that, says the fisherman. I sit here in the harbor without a care in the world and doze. It was only your clicking that disturbed me. And so the thus enlightened tourist walks pensively away, for at one time he had believed that he too was working so as someday not to have to work anymore, and no trace of pity for the shabbily dressed fisherman remained in him, only a little envy. Yeah, it's an old story. That story really, is as old as human civilization, right? But if we look around today, you see the same thing. So the richest people in our country, what they do all day, just work and expect the same from us as well. They just want to manage and manipulate your time, and everything that you want is dangled in front of you so that one day you can have it, as long as you work hard and you keep working hard, and every day you work harder, and one day you can get to the point where you don't have to work anymore. And it seems like a stupid cycle, you know? And what is it really? It's like, say I get a welding degree. I go to school, I learn how to weld, and I get a job in a factory. What does that factory owner want from me? He wants me to be there every day. He wants production, and they want more and more out of you. They'll pay you overtime for the extra hours if you'll only stay and not leave the building, you know? And it's never enough. There's never enough things that you can make or manufacture. There's never enough things that you can build. There's never enough money that you can make for the company where they will be satisfied. It's just more and more and more. They want you there all hours of every day they can get you, you know? And for what? So that the person that owns the factory can build their ego and their vanity and build their bank accounts. And how do they entice you to stay and work so hard? By building your bank account slowly and building up your ego and your vanity. And then people get it into their minds that I'll be the owner one day. I'll have my own business, bigger and better than this, and I'll own everything. And they build on their own ego and their own vanity so that one day they can be the ones to tell everybody to work for them and to spend all their time devoted to the company that they're building. And for what? You know, for nothing. The only way that you can really truly find freedom in this world is to defeat your ego and to never search for vanity. Okay.